if you're involved in a life and death situation, whether it's a shooting or whatever, it's going to impact you emotionally. And to the law enforcement leaders, that's something that we try to preach to them. If your officer's involved in something like that, seek out help for them, because they're going to tell you that they're fine, because that's what's expected of them from the culture. You go through these heinous events, and you're just supposed to come out on the other side and be unscathed. And it's just not natural.
Welcome back to In Focus Kentucky, where each week we look at one different issue impacting Kentuckians. And today we're looking at mental health help for law enforcement and how police officers cope with the emotional aftermath of traumatic cases they encounter. And joining me now is licensed mental health therapist Tiara Holt. Tiara received a master's degree in mental health counseling from Eastern Kentucky University and has worked with Central Kentucky Recovery Center and the Kentucky Counseling Center. Tiara, thanks so much for joining us today. Thank you. And talk to me, why is mental health so important?
That's a great question. So just as our physical health is important and we see a medical doctor to ensure and maintain our physical health, we need to ensure that our minds are healthy as well. In the counseling field, we operate on a wellness model that is comprised of 8 dimensions of wellness. Those include physical, intellectual, emotional, environmental, spiritual, social, financial, and occupational wellness.
So Tiara, how does the stress affect the mental health of the average worker?
That's a great question. Occupational stress is particularly important because many of us spend our day-to-day lives in the workplace. So when we don't have strong support systems and resources for self-care and mental health in the workplace, and we've got compounded stress at home from other areas of life, burnout occurs, and you have a higher risk of having occupational stress.
And speaking about police officers and emergency workers, how would you say that this stress still works with them as well? How do they play into this?
It's the same thing goes along with it, but for law enforcement in particular, their occupation is already a high stress situation, and oftentimes occupational stress is an overflow from these other dimensions that I mentioned in wellness. For example, if you have an officer that is experiencing divorce or something of that nature at home, it can affect his job, causing a number of things, inability to focus, diminished cognitive processing, and really affects the way that he's able to perform on his job.
So speaking of those officers, with your experience as a therapist, how would you begin to assess a situation and evaluating a person that needs some assistance?
Well, I like to first tell everybody that our response to stress and trauma is completely subjective. It's different person to person. A lot of that has to do with the resilience factor, which is one of the most important things in life. That's how we bounce back from challenging and traumatic experiences. And so I would simply create a space and allow that officer or that client to share their experience and feel safe doing so. And the treatment process kind of just unravels from there.
And for those people that watch the program and may even be in the law enforcement industry, what would you suggest? Where do they start if they want to seek out counseling or to learn more information?
Well, there are a ton of resources locally and nationally. One that I really find helpful is NAMI. It's the National Alliance of Mental Illness. We have a Lexington location here. Mentalhealth.org is a great resource. And if you are looking to find a therapist or myself, someone locally, a great search engine is psychologytoday.com. You can simply go in and type in your zip code or your city and click find a therapist, and there will be a list of all of the providers in your area.
And talk about, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but just people who are wanting to, when you get into this profession for yourself, every day is different for you.
Absolutely.
So how do you kind of get your own mindset to prepare for each day working with people who may need some additional counseling?
Well, I am forced to practice what I preach in the counseling field. I always tell new clients I am simply meeting you where you're at in your experience and your journey in life, no matter where that is. But I have to practice self-care as well. So I have colleagues that I converse with daily just to discuss anything that is stressful in maybe particular cases that I'm dealing with, or just job stress. It's one of those things where you have to be responsible for building your own support system as well as having the resources provided by your workplace.
Well, Tiara, once again, we really appreciate you making time to join us and talking about this very difficult but also important issue of mental health awareness. And thanks for making time for us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us for In Focus Kentucky. You can watch this or any of our shows at SpectrumInFocus.com. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Mario Anderson TV. I'd love to hear which issues you think we should be tackling on the show.